Good Sunday afternoon, everyone. As you can tell, and as I mentioned before, I am fighting one of the many colds going around, so I'm going to keep this audio mercifully short and sweet for your sake so that I don't start coughing halfway through it. Um, in case you have not looked at the announcements for this week, the only thing that I'm having you do is matching questions. There will not be a discussion board this week since I'll be traveling and at a conference, and that conference takes up a lot of hours within the day, so I'm not going to have very good access to um, email or anything, especially Blackboard. So I don't feel like it's fair to make you participate in something in which I'm not participating in. So enjoy the easier workload this week. I know many of you are probably sick as well. So kind of take this week to, if at all possible, I know I'm asking for the impossible since you're all full-time students, but try to get recouped on your rest and get well. So this week we're going to be discussing Chapter 7, Non-Communicable Diseases and Aging. We've already covered child health and the young adult health, so now we're going to be going into the older adult health. And for political correctness, let's refer to them as older adults rather than old people. Um, I know that when I get to a particular point in which I deem myself to be an older adult, I don't really want to be called an old person, just an older adult. So putting it into perspective as far as population, um, I am the last year of the boomers. I was born in 1964, and baby boomers are those who were born from 46 to 64. These will be the largest population of older adults. By the time I reach age 65, about 30% of your population is going to be 65 or older. So anyone who's thinking about going into gerontological studies, gerontology, any field working with older adults, this is going to bode very well for you. If you have not thought about going this avenue, I encourage you to do so as a specialty, just because there's going to be a huge need for not only those knowledgeable in gerontology in the medical field, but also fields like marketing, business, banking, all of those are going to be affected by this aging population. You'll sometimes hear it referred to as the silver tsunami. Um, I think it's kind of a funny term. Um, and just to let you know, even as large as my population is, the millennials are actually a larger group, a larger population than we are. Um, I include myself in the baby boomers, although I probably don't, I really identify with a baby boomer. I feel like, especially mentally, I'm much younger than this particular generation, but I do find a lot of the consumerism and spending habits are very similar to those within my generation. So what we're going to see within this particular group is, unlike the child health, where we really saw a high incidence of infectious disease, now we're going to see more of a chronic or non-communicable disease. Now, a non-communicable disease doesn't necessarily have to be chronic, however, in most cases it is. So, very simply put, a human body is like any piece of machinery in the fact that it is eventually going to wear out. Um, we don't know at what date our parts are going to start wearing out, but it's good to get those um, checkups done and make sure things that are under warranty are taken care of. Some of the chronic diseases you'll see with older adults and a non-communicable disease. First of all, the first one that comes to my mind is cancer. Very high incidence of cancer in this particular age group. That is a non-communicable disease. Again, as I try to do every week, this will be on your final exam, the last week of class. What kind of disease is cancer? It's non-communicable. Other things include hypertension, so high blood pressure, diabetes, respiratory diseases such as COPD, asthma. I myself have asthma, but I've had it most of my adult life. Um, Cardiovascular disease, you'll see things of sensory nature, sensory impairment, so loss of vision, loss of hearing. You'll see musculoskeletal diseases such as arthritis and osteoporosis. And then, of course, the neuropsychiatric diseases such as dementia and depression. Again, a lot of these, especially something along the neuropsychiatric realm, could be a comorbidity to another illness. So you may see Parkinson's with dementia as one of the symptoms of that. So we can say, well, geez, I'm going to get old. This is my fate. I may as well get used to it. We don't have to accept that as our fate. I know many of us have that genetic predisposition to develop one of those non-communicable diseases. In my family, hypertension, high blood pressure is a very, very prevalent disease, as is high cholesterol. Thank goodness at 52, I have not developed either one of them. I have my dad's genetics to thank for that, because at 72, he hasn't developed either one of them either. So I'm hoping I keep pulling from his gene pool rather than my mom's side, which we have diabetes as well as the hypertension and high cholesterol. So again, knowing what we do as we're younger really affects us as we're older. Taking that fact that yes, we are at a higher risk for developing a chronic disease at this point in your life, you can avoid the complications and maybe even delay the onset, or perhaps even prevent the onset from some of these diseases by using secondary prevention such as screenings, and even first prevention such as diet, exercise, adequate sleep. Screenings will hopefully provide early detection, which will lead to a better health outcome. One of the things I really want you to think about this week, since we're not having a discussion board, but think about how our particular healthcare system within the United States, which we talked about a few chapters back, how we're more of a reactive healthcare model rather than a prevention healthcare model. So we need to kind of shift that focus into the prevention standpoint and utilize those screenings so that we can catch some of these things sooner and treat them earlier and have a better outcome rather than living with a dire result. And I'd love to know, again, no discussion board, so kind of think about this, but do you think implementing a mandatory screening program might help decrease healthcare costs? I happen to think they would. You can't make anybody do anything, though, so we know that from all of our discussions. I wonder why it is that so many older adults are reluctant to participate in other screenings and preventions. I know in my dad's case, it's simply ignorance is bliss. I don't want to do it. I'm this age. I've been healthy so far. You know, why would I worry about what's going to happen now? Another mindset may be, well, gee, at this age, you know, what if they catch it early? You know, I really don't want to go through those sorts of treatments. I think those are really valid reasons and deserve a lot of credence to them. One of the big issues in the United States is how we think about our older adults and how we care for them. We are not a society in which caring for our older adults is priority. This is a sad state of affairs. It's simply not part of our culture. It's not the way we're raised. There are many other cultures that treat their older adults differently. I think part of the reason within our particular culture that this is due to the fact that many of us grow up and leave the places that we were born and raised, leaving our families and living some distance away. I moved back to Boise in 2004 this time. My husband and I did it solely for the reason that his parents were reaching an age where we knew we needed to be close. And now my parents, you know, thankfully, especially my dad is a very young 72, my mom a little bit older 72, but there is going to come that point where they're going to need care, and as children that I don't want to say that burden, but maybe that responsibility, that obligation falls on us. So comparing the U.S. culture to the other cultures, in the Chinese, Japanese, and Korean cultures, children care for their elders. It's rooted in the Confucian principle. And even outside a family, the culture is so um, reverent towards older adults. They are treated with dignity, they're treated with high esteem, very high respect. The 60th birthday of an individual is seen as a passage into old age. This is in Korea. And this is celebrated with great honor because in Korea, their ancestors never reached it to age 60. So those in present day Korea see this as a huge milestone event to be celebrated. I think that's awesome. I plan on having a totally kick butt celebration when I turn 60. I had one when I turned 50. I think each decade for me, especially, tends to get better and better. So, as great as my 50s are, I have to imagine my 60s are going to totally rock. Greek culture does not have the stigma around aging and death. So, old age, again, is honored and celebrated, and respect for elders is central to the family. In Greece, the terms old man or old woman are actually considered terms of endearment and respect. They're not an insult as they are in our country. How do we treat our society or change our society? So I think maybe looking at other cultures and how they treat their elders gives us a good lesson. And I think as we start to see this silver tsunami, quote unquote, we're going to see such a large population of older adults that we're going to have to learn to change the status quo. Be an active part in their lives. Be patient with them. When you read this chapter, those of you that are young enough to have living grandparents, I want you to think of your grandparents when you read this. How would you want your grandparents to be treated by society as a whole? And that's how we should be treating them. They do move a little slower. They may not think as quickly as we would like to think, but I can guarantee you that inside every older adult, there is a young person screaming and looking in the mirror saying, what the hell happened? It's unfair because you gain all this incredible wisdom and experience as you get older, and your body starts to fall apart at some point. So with that being said, I'm going to end this PowerPoint for now. As I said, I'll be kind of sporadically available this week. Hopefully there's not too many questions, but enjoy this week. Try to stay healthy. I put that on the checklist even. There are so many strains of so much garbage going around. I know half of my classes at Boise State are sick with either strep throat, stomach flu, and we have our first confirmed case of influenza in Boise as well. So be careful, everyone. Stay safe, hydrate, sleep, eat, take time for yourself. Have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you all next week. Thanks.